The impudence, the audacity, the unmitigated gall of those knuckleheads of liberty podcasters, daring to voice opinions outside the mainstream of accepted thought. Listen if you dare. It's angry, it's funny, it's even sometimes sad, but it's always based on freedom and justice, as you will see. Here's our host, Jason McPhee.
Welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty. We are coming at you on our first show of 2023. It is January 2nd. And we have a break from the normal politics. We have John Cameron here to interview, and he wears many hats. He is an author, I guess a self-described freedom fighter. He is an occasional host and contributor to our sister show, the Libertarian Counterpoint, and he wears a whole bunch of other hats, so I'm sure it'll be an interesting discussion. But before we get to that, let me introduce you to our panel. In our upper left-hand corner, we have Leon, the word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. In our lower left-hand corner, we have our screaming eagle of freedom, Tim Everett. He is a pilot in the state of California. In our upper right-hand corner, we have John Cameron, who we'll be talking to today, and my name's Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host. So let's jump right into it. John, you've worn a lot of hats. You've done a lot of things. I mean, maybe we could get our invisible hand, James. Maybe you could bring up there we go, a web page there John has. You've worn a lot of hats. My gosh, soldier. You've done a lot of speaking training, consulting, just all kinds of different things. And like I said, you seem to be pushing toward liberty, and that means you're exactly the kind of person that we want to talk to on this show. So you tell us a little bit about your journey and sort of how you've got to where you've gotten with your authorship and all these other things.
Well, good question. I have no answer, so I guess the show's probably no. I read Ayn Rand when I was, 14, 15, something like that. And my father was in the military. He was in a World War II veteran. And I thought, reading the news and everything else, that people who thought that more government, especially government having their fingers in everything, was a really bad idea, right? Anybody who's especially gone through the last 3 years of what I call the panicdemic, other people call it different things, and comes out this side and thinks that more government control is a good thing, is not really connected with reality. But anyway, I was a wild youth. I decided to follow in my father's footsteps. And became a paratrooper. I actually tried to get into special forces and couldn't, which is probably a good thing. And the reason is their motto is Deo Presso Libere, to liberate the oppressed. And that's kind of been my mission, really from the time that I was, probably 15 or 16. And I've gone about trying to help people, through commerce a lot, help buyers and sellers get together, through training, to help people know how to do their jobs better and to lead better, since there's so much terrible management around. I thought that when I became a paratrooper, that I would be, defending freedom. And came to the conclusion a few years later that probably really wasn't. But the whole idea was that people are oppressed by government, and I tried to do a lot of different things to help people get some personal financial freedom. Because if you're rich, you can pretty much or can make a good living. You can pretty much tell the government to take a hike. And then,
whoops! Looks like John's frozen. Oh, there you are. You're back. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was talking about the boring stuff when I froze up anyway, so that's okay.
You were just in the middle of talking about financial freedom and stuff like that, and being able to,
I spent a lot of my years in publishing and commerce, and then I started. When I left that, started training people in leadership management, project management, and the core goal all the time was to give people the skills and the confidence to better themselves. And then, all along I was writing some books. I started writing books, I don't know, 20 years ago. And
James,
the books have a
James, can you pull up the webpage again real quick? Thanks. This is the Amazon page, so you can see John's books here. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, and so all the books are thrillers. At least I think they're thrilling, and some of the best thrillers that very few people have ever read. And pretty soon, within a couple of months, the ones that are on Amazon are going to be a little bit shorter, a little less self-indulgent. And my mission now is to try to get a publisher, an agent, and all of the books that I've written have sometimes pretty obviously a libertarian theme, and sometimes not so obviously. They're not preachy. I mean, there's the heroes in them don't ever go into a 17-page rant like one of my heroes, Ayn Rand, did in her books, because I don't think people are willing to read a 17-page rant anymore.
Although it is amazing how many people, though, that Rand had captured with her long writing style, because there's so many people you talk to, that's how they got into the movement. But yes, sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I absolutely agree. And different books for different times. I think people nowadays, their attention span's about the attention span of a gnat. So, hopefully what I've done in my books is I have the heroes are in commerce, and the heroes an ex-paratrooper. Imagine that, where he's tall and big and handsome. So when you're a writer, you can just you can do whatever you want, and so they typically run into a combination of what I call crony socialism, and the news is full right now of crony serving interconnection between media and regulatory agencies, independent regulatory agencies, and the government to make sure that somebody's always got an unfair advantage. And so all my books have that woven through them. And then so that's why I would call myself an author right now. I do a little fundraising for the Sacramento Ballet, because I love the ballet and I'm good at fundraising. But
John,
that's really kind of the journey. I don't know if I've well, I was paratrooper for 2.5 years. I was in the military for 4. Okay. I was a infantryman, and when I signed up for Ranger School, I dropped out of Ranger School, and this is actually kind of funny. I think it's funny. So Ranger School, back when I went, normally people lost between 20 and 30 pounds in Ranger School. And when I got there, I weighed 120 pounds. Ooh. And so I was always the lightest guy in my battalion, even though they made me, when I was paratrooper, they made me an M60 machine gunner. So I carried a 23-pound machine gun, plus all the rest of the stuff, because I was the best shot before my eyes went. I had 2010 vision and 2015 vision, and I was the best shot. So the best shot carried the gun. It didn't matter what rank they were. But you sometimes carrying a little pot belly around does you good, and I could never manage to get one. We get one on there, so that's why I didn't become a ranger. I became a paratrooper, and I was stationed in northern Italy in the 1st of the 509th Airborne Battalion Combat Team, and their job was basically to be during the time where this was in the 70s. Where the Russian military was actually pretty good, or at least we thought they were pretty good. Although from what we're seeing in the Ukraine, maybe they've always been a paper tiger.
Yeah.
So you never know. But it was pretty scary. I never got. I used to always jokingly say that the closest I ever came to getting killed in the military, other than on a jump. One time I was on a jump, guy, two in front of me on my side and 3 behind me. 2 guys got killed. But
Wow.
the closest I ever got to being killed was when I picked a fight with a Sicilian soccer team in a bar. As you might know, I might have figured out I had a couple of drinks then when I did that. But no, I was willing. That our military was protecting freedom, and
Well,
anyway, so fast forward. I've worked in publishing.
Do you believe that
What was the
do you
question?
believe that the military is still protecting freedom, or do you believe their mission have since been undermined or distorted, or whatever word you choose?
Well, I think the people in the military are generally good people. I don't know about upper management. I'm a little suspect of upper management almost everywhere. I just don't know if if we really need as a country. No, I know for a fact, as a country, we don't really need to spend as much on military as the next 6 countries. The number. The idea that a country needs to protect its self-interest hinges on the idea that you got borders and you got countries. So, if you're going to have that, then you probably have to have some kind of military. But I always point out to people that we have this thing called the Pacific Ocean on one side and the Atlantic Ocean on the other, and the Canadians above and the Mexicans below. So the idea that an external threat is really serious to us. I don't know. There's some crazy out there with nukes, so I might want to have some anti-missile systems. But the people who are in the military try to do right, and consistently, our military folks are a little bit better about not raping, looting, and killing prisoners and that sort of thing. Every once in a while, but not. But I don't really think we need this big fat military. Are you raising your hand, or Tim, or I don't know, you're waving?
Yes, yeah. So my question is, have you read Smedley Butler's book War is a Racket? And if you have, did that reinforce your opinions of the military's role, especially in modern times? But I mean, he wrote that back in the 30s or 40s, I can't remember. But so do you have anything, did that have any bearing on your opinion of the military's use?
I haven't read it. I just, when you're on the inside, like I know a lot of people who work in state government, and a lot of them are hugely anti-government, and closet libertarians.
Uh-oh, you froze it. Closet libertarians.
Closet libertarian was the last thing I heard, John.
Yeah, well, so it's anybody who I think has worked in a government organization realizes that. Sorry about this, folks. I've got this thing that's supposed to protect security, and I think all it's doing is protecting people from hearing me talk, which might not be a bad thing. So I think anybody that's been inside it knows that the people are good, but maybe the mission is bad. And also, the massive spending, you call it military industrial complex. We have a bunch of those complexes. We now have the educational industrial complex. We have the medical pharmaceutical industrial complex, and certainly have the military industrial complex. And our newest fighter, it's like $130 million a piece and falls out of the sky. And so the idea of spending that much money on something that somebody can take out with a $40,000 surface to air missile while it's taken off, or, I don't know, sabotage all the software in it is crazy. But anyway, I'm kind of getting far field there because there is another part to the story. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think just as a general point, we're working against ourselves. It's almost like a self-inflicted wound every time we spend that much money on on our weapons or other things like that. When we're, at some point, I think you pass a break-even point, I guess, if you're spending so much that you wind up harming yourself in the end, which is sort of like what we seem to be doing as the world policeman a little bit. But yeah, sorry, just a little bit of a digression there.
No, I absolutely agree with you. And we could talk about, I don't know if you can hear me.
Oh, you just froze. We could talk about
Reagan's strategy.
There you go.
Yeah. I don't know. We could talk about Reagan's strategy with, with the Star Wars stuff. Basically, it bankrupted the Soviet Union. They collapsed. We're bankrupting ourselves. So, are the Chinese a threat? Yeah. Are the Russians a threat? Yeah. But it's just the way we go about doing this, really, I think if anybody looks at it and comes to any conclusion other than a lot of friends are getting paid off and that's why we're spending that money, I think they're stupid. They're spending so much money so that so many people can have their trotters in the trough, as I like to say. But I would like to cover one other little area before we go. Around in because of the massive amount of government regulation and that's in the world, I had a late life labor of love working as a fundraiser for Pacific Legal Foundation, and that was kind of the culmination of being a freedom fighter, because unfortunately all these independent regulatory agencies now are omnipotent, and the only place you can fight them, because it's not legal to shoot them, is in the courts. So I raised money for some brilliant lawyers to do exactly that. And then it dawned on me while I was doing that and watching what was going on that it was really tilting at windmills, because that you'd get a case all the way to the Supreme Court to tell a bureaucratic agency that it wasn't allowed to do something that is obviously unconstitutional. I think I'm frozen here. Hold on.
No, you're okay.
No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
So, it dawned on me that I was tilting at windmills. I don't know how, we call it the powers that be, the powers that be are omnipotent. And I coined the phrase, the powers that we let be. But until enough people get upset about the fact that the government can do whatever it wants with no accountability, well, if we did the same thing, we'd be in jail. I don't think things are going to change. And unfortunately, so many people are making their living directly from the government, or from handouts from the government, or from grants from the government, or for working from a defense contractor that is paid by the government, or the educational system that comes from the government, floating all these free loans to students. The system's not going to change. So, it was fun and working with great people, but it felt a little bit toward the end as if I was tilting at windmills. And you can tilt at windmills when you're a young man, but Quixote kind of age, you don't want to do that. That's a bad thing. So,
but
anyway, I guess that's
John, the thing that you have just laid off, you just laid out, is this disease of dependency that is spreading throughout our society. And this is creating some very big problems in terms of our liberties and our freedoms. And you're absolutely right in terms of the amount of people that have found their way to be dependent upon the government for either their living or their way of life, or whatever you want to call it. It's a real problem.
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I came up with the idea that you're either part of the take or the make. If you're part of the take, you're got your trotters in the trough, and one way or another, you're a teacher who doesn't have to produce a student who can read or write. You're a defense contractor that sells way overpriced toys to people and gives political contributions to government. So, and maker people in commerce, they're people who are making cars or toys or a cup of coffee. And so many people are in the take part of it now that fighting that is that's a tough thing. And I don't profess to be smart enough to know how to do it, other than like any fight, you do it a bit at a time. If maybe a start would be having people run for school boards and put a stop to teachers being completely unaccountable. Another thing is, people can certainly vote with their pocketbook or their feet, and every time they have a choice about where to buy or what to buy, they can do it that way. But it's I have a number of pretty energetic, smart associates and friends who've said it's pretty much the end is nigh. The end is nigh. And I don't know if that's true. I think I'm too much of an optimist. I think, kind of in hindsight, and I think am I frozen again? Was I frozen?
No,
Sorry, folks.
No.
Yeah. Or maybe good for you. You don't have to listen to me ramble on. I think that the panicdemic, as I call it, in many ways has actually been a very good thing. Not to the 100 million poor people in the world that starved because of the lunacy we did, because of the trickle down of shut down economies and the money wasn't there. But the fact that so many people have seen how poorly our kakistocracy, the government of idiots, does things, and how incompetent they are, and how much they lie, and how much money they can make through lying and being stupid and incompetent. And so I think I talk to people in their 20s now who might have gone into this thing as socialists and have come out of it as leaning toward libertarians, because they thought, well, what the hell? The company that I work for is no longer in existence. My boss had this place that I worked, and he put in 20 hours a week, and he was a good, unnecessary business, and that's gone. Now where am I going to work? And I couldn't go to the store and get stuff. I mean, all this craziness from the panicdemic, or whatever you want to call it, I think is opened some eyes. Now there are some people who got their heads down and are buying everything that the talking heads in government say, but I think that number is fewer.
Well, I was just going to bring up the fact of the young too, because you mentioned, like 20-year-olds and others who become more skeptical, and the idea too that this was literally the group that was the least at risk, and they're watching the fallout that's going to fall heavily on their shoulders from all this. So, if maybe, one of the hardest groups for us to reach is libertarians, because they're coming right out of that government school mill, where they've gotten 20 years roughly of indoctrination going on there, 15 years or something like that. So it's
and then they're even worse off, although they can't vote yet, is what this thing did to children. There's children don't, more of them die of the flu than the COVID, even based on the government numbers, which we know are all lies. So I don't know whether this is going to get shut down in the state of California with this new law for misinformation and disinformation. But
you're not a doctor, really, John, so they can't take your license away from you for saying that.
I do practice unlicensed medicine, but only there. So, and the other thing that you brought up when you brought up education is that parents are so pissed off, so upset, berserk, that their children who don't catch the thing were forced to wear masks. They've watched children go sideways developmentally. They're lost 2 years, especially poor people. And poor people, black, brown, white, whatever, were already in favor of what's the word I'm looking for? And all the rest of that, to be able to take their kids out of public schools and spend it on private schools if they want to. And now this has reinforced that. So I think that if somebody can find a way to touch all that resentment and just anger over how bad people have been screwed with, children have been screwed with, young people have been screwed with and done wrong over the last, couple, 3 years, then, maybe we can get some traction against the kakistocracy, the government of idiots that's running us. Maybe we can, when people are upset enough, then they might start to act. And they're certainly upset enough. Now, the last set of elections didn't do anything, but, again, when you put up candidates who are idiots, no matter how bad things are, people aren't going to vote for them. Yeah.
Well, we are getting close to the end of the show, and although you've given us some hope that maybe people are waking up because of our terrible lockdown policy. But do you have any plans for the future as far as other ideas for pushing liberty, or maybe any books in the works or anything like that you wanted to talk about?
Well, I think cleaning up my books to make them the fiction, to make it a little self-indulgent, and because they do carry a little, if you're going to entertain people, then sometimes they don't realize because you're preaching and teaching and writing all at the same time. All writers do it, whether it's obvious or not. If you can get them to walk away with a little kernel of distrust for the government or admiration for people who's put in 80 hours building a business, that's something. And the other thing I'm fixing to do again is, doing some blogging, Substack and other places like that, allow people to get an audience. I'm a pretty good writer. And so that's something I want to do. If anybody's expert in that amongst this group and wants to kind of hold my hand on it, that'd be a wonderful thing. But that's stupid enough to ask a question. Tell me about liberty. I'm gonna tell them, because I think that's our duty. It really is. Sometimes it feels like you're talking to the dead, but every time you get a chance to engage, and ask the people, a question like, when's the last time you ever saw Target put together an armed patrol and go take customers from Walmart? Maybe it'll make them think that the way things are going aren't the right things.
Okay, well, thanks so much, John, for joining us, and thank you for listening to us as well out there, our audience. And until the next one, stay free.
Yes, indeed. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.